So last time we left off, we made sure that we could actually take our items that we pick up here and place them inside the character plane by right-clicking on them, and they would go into the correct slots here. But right now, there's nothing stopping me from taking a sword, for example, and putting it into the head slot. So we have the functionality down where we actually right-click on stuff and it moves to the correct place. But we haven't added the functionality for dragging and clicking an item and placing it inside the inventory like that. So I would like to make it possible or impossible for me to place an item wrong by taking, for example, a potion and placing it on the head, and a weapon and placing it over here, for example. So that's what we're going to look for now. If you haven't done it already, you need to select your main hand here and set the can contain to a generic weapon here. And the reason that we put can contain as generic weapon is because we need our main hands and our two hands to have the same type, and they're both going to be considered generic weapon. And then later we're going to look at first we're going to look at if it's a main hand or a two hand, and then we're going to put them as a generic weapon. I'll show you later inside the function, but just remember to select the main hand and put the generic weapon here so that we know what to do. Okay, so in here we need to take into account if we are moving to a what kind of slot we are moving to. So first of all, I would like to make an if statement here, because I just remember there's something we need to do. So say if 2 isn't null and from isn't null. And then we're going to move everything inside that statement. I can't remember, but it's going to prevent a bug later on. So just make sure that 2 and from exists before we do all these things. So this is going to prevent a bug later. Then we're going to make another if statement here that says if 2 that can contain item type dot generic. So if the item we're moving to can contain item type dot generic, then we're going to do all these things in here. So this means that inside our game here, I don't need to have that on maximize because we need to see these things. In our game, if we click the inventory here, we have all our slots and they're all picked as can contain generic, which means that if we're trying to move some items around and the item or the slot we're moving it to is of type generic, which means that anything can be put in that slot, so all our items can come in there, well then we should swap our items around. For example, if we move from one slot inside the inventory to another slot inside the same inventory, well then this code needs to be triggered. So right now we have made this if statement, which actually means that we are only able to move to generic slots at the moment, which means that I can take this sword here and I can put it in another slot inside this inventory, and I can also open this chest and take a weapon and put it over here. But right now our if statement only takes into account generic item type on the slot side. So if I take this and want to put it inside my character plane panel, then it pops back in. So now I can't put my weapon anywhere inside my character panel here. The only way I can place something is by right-clicking on a right type, for example. Or actually no, because we're not taking that into account either. It's also using the swap item function. Sorry about that. So right now we can't put stuff into our panel. So we need to take into consideration all these different kinds of can contain head and neck and so on. So if we do like this, go back into our script here and say if 2, which is the object or the slot we are moving to, can contain generic type, or it can contain the 2 can contain type. So we might already do this, because I'm gonna make an item type up here called moving type, and that's the item type we're moving. And it's gonna be equal to from the current item type. So why am I not just writing this line of code down here? like this? Well, the reason I'm not doing that is because we're going to use this moving type later when we need to look out for the weapons for if the weapon is a generic weapon, no, if the weapon is a two-hand, a main hand, or an offhand, for example. So that's why we need this line here, and we might as well already add it. So if the moving type is equal to can contain. So now we're also checking if we are moving a sword or let's say a helmet into a slot on our character panel. Well, then we are checking, well, that type we are moving is helmet. That slot we want to move something into, which is 2, is that also a helmet? If that's also a helmet, well, then it's okay to move everything over in the character panel. So let's see if we do like this. And pick up some items. Let's see what we have here. We're still not working for weapons, so we need to get something else. There's a helmet. So right now I can try to take my helmet. I want to put it down here. Doesn't work. It pops back in. Well, then I want to put it up here. Doesn't work either. And if I want to put it in the head slot, that works. So now I popped into the head slot, and that's the only place in here that I'm able to place it. Just a little note. Right now you're not able to pick anything up from the inventory, and that's because the inventory is not open at the moment. Because right now our inventory is just open all the times, but we're not able to click on an inventory unless it's set as open. And if we click on the character panel here, yeah, we haven't added that, but when we press the B button, when we open our other inventory, it's closed now, so I can't click here. When I press B again, now it's open, so now I can click and pick up items and everything like this. And that's the thing, we can't do this right now because this one is actually set as closed, even though we could see it, because we can see it from the beginning. So don't worry if you can't click on items and pick them up and move them over here yet. We are going to fix that later. Okay, so now we established that we can put items in the right slot, and we can right click on them to put them into the right slot. And the same goes for our offhands and the rest of our things. But our weapons are not taken into account yet. So I can't right click on my weapons, and I can't put them in here yet. And the reason that I can't click on my weapons or and can't move them is because I'm not taking weapons into account here. So up here we are going to make a new if statement. This is if from that current item dot item type. Actually, I can just say if moving type, I already got it, equals item type dot two hand, or from dot or moving type equals item type dot main hand. So if it's a main hand or a two hand, then we're going to say moving type equals item type dot generic weapon. And you'll see why we're doing this in a moment. So oh, sorry, I shouldn't put you out. So you'll see in a moment why we are doing this, but right now it doesn't make any sense, but it will right after I've shown you this. So we are trying to equip a sword, which is a two-hand or a main hand, and we are checking if it's a two-hand or main hand. Then we are going to set the generic weapon, the item type as a generic weapon, which means that we can actually equip it. So if we save this and go out here, it's gonna make sense soon. And we can get some items. Let's see. Here's a sword. We can right click on the sword and we can put it down here, for example. So now I've added my sword here. Let's see if I can get some other weapons, some shields or something. Maybe I should just go and do so. We'll get everything right away. Okay, I just paused the video and start recording again because I needed to get some weapons that we could test. So right now we have a sword here and we have a two-handed weapon, and I should be able to take this two-handed weapon and put it in here and make them switch places, these two. So right now they're just switching places. but nothing is stopping me from having a what is it called, a shield at the same time as I have a two-handed equipped. And if I take my sword in here, I can have that and a shield, and I can take a two-hand and a shield. And we don't want to be able to have a two-hand and a shield at the same time. So to avoid that, we need to go back into our script. And don't worry, right now we can't right-click on our weapons because we haven't fixed that yet, but we'll do that very soon. So let's see, in here, we need to make another thing inside this if statement here. So if it's two-hand and we also need to check if or be able to check what's on the offhand slot, because if our moving type is a two-hand, then we only want to do this, set the moving type to a generic weapon, if our offhand slot is empty. So we need to make that offhand slot available to our our script. So if we go to the character panel here and go all the way here to the top, then we can make a public slot called weapon slot, and in here we should just say get return equipment slots 9. I think it's 9. So get weapon slot should just return this slot we have right here. So if we look at the character panel, if we try to play this and check out the character panel, 9 is our main hand, right? And our main hand is that one right there. I have a bad angle, but this is our main hand right here. So we're going to return that, and we also need to be able to access the offhand slot with the shield in very easy. So public slot offhand slot get return equipment slots 10, because the offhand's right after. So let's save this and go out and check it real quick. Let's see, what do I have here? Because now I added some code. Save this and go back. So it should be number 9, number 10, and offhand is number 10. Yeah. So now we showed that we have the correct one. So now we can return the offhand and the weapon slot. So let's go back into our, wasn't in our slot. And in here, we simply need to say and character panel dot instance to get the singleton dot offhand slot, which we have just made sure that the offhand slot is the offhand slot in there, is empty. So now we're only changing our two-hand into a generic weapon if the offhand slot is empty. So we can't equip a two-hander if our offhand slot has something on it already. As you can see here, we will change it to a generic weapon, which means that our slot here is a generic weapon. So when we've changed the type, we will be able to get into this if statement and set the correct things up and switch the places, of course. So let's try to see if we can equip a two-hander. See here, we can take our two-hander and put it here, no problem. Okay, of course I can't move them yet, remove them from my inventory yet. Let's see if we can get some shield or something. There's a shield and there's a main hand. There's a two-hander. So we equip our shield, and I'm taking my two-hander and I want to equip that, and I'm still able to do that. So let's see what's wrong. I need to check if I forgot to save or not. See if I save here, and let's try one more time. If I pick up some items, see, maybe I just forgot to save. It's a lot of access at least. Let's see, we can get a shield. Maybe I should just pause and recording. Yeah, there we go. So here's our shield. Let's equip our shield. And then we can take our axe and try to equip that. And it doesn't equip. So it was just because I forgot to save before. So I can't equip my axe, but what if I try to pick up some more items? There's a normal sword. So I can take my sword and I'm able to equip that one. And right now I can't equip my axe because there's something here. Okay, of course I can't remove them, so. But now we are not able to put in a two-handed weapon when we have something in our offhand. So we are still not able to click on our weapon, so we need to do something extra inside our equip weapons function. Let's try to do like this. There we go. So let's try to, if we right click on the weapon, sorry, there's a breakpoint from before, just gonna remove that. So if we right click on our weapon, nothing is gonna happen. It's not gonna jump to its spot here. And the reason it doesn't jump to its spot is because we need to add some functionality to it. So if we go into our character panel somewhere there, and we go to the equip item function, then we need to add some more functionality here. Because right now we are saying slot.swap items, and then we're trying to swap the items into the slot that has the same item type. But when we have a weapon, the item type is either main hand or two hand at the moment. And right now we are looking for a slot that can contain the correct item type, and we don't have a slot inside our inventory that can contain either a main hand or two hand or character panel, sorry. So our slots only has, or our character panel only has a slot that can contain a slot that can contain a generic weapon, which is not the same as a main hand or two hand. So before we do this, I also want to show you another thing we need to fix from in here. If we have a two-hand equipped, there's nothing that is stopping us for adding a shield. So let's see if we can get a two-hand picked up here somewhere. There. So if I'm equipping this two-hand, there's nothing stopping me from taking the shield and putting it next to it. So now we again have a two-handed equipped and a shield at the same time. And we also need to fix that inside this function here, the equip item function. So the first thing we need to do is to say if item.item. So the item we're trying to equip, the item script, that item that's sitting on the item script, if that is an item type, if the item type is equal to item type dot main hand, or this item type is equal to a two hand, and our offhand slot is empty. If that's the case, well, then we're gonna say slot.swap items slot.weapon slot. So we're gonna swap the item we just right clicked on with the weapon slot. Gonna try to swap it here at least. Else if our item here is an item type offhand, and actually let's just wait with this one. I can show you what it's going to do then. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to make an else here, and we're going to put this one in here. Okay, so if we save now and jump back into Unity, play our game, then we are able to right click on our axe and equip it, and we are able to right click on our sword and equip that one, swap it out with the axe. But we are still able to equip our shield after. If we equip our two hand, we can right click on our shield to equip that, and we're still able to do that. And we don't want to be able to do that. We only want to be able to have a two hand, have a shield when we don't have a two hand in our hand. So now we can take this code here put it in between, because we need to make sure that we can't equip those two things at the same time. So if our item type is an offhand, so if we're trying to equip an offhand and our weapon slot is empty, so if our weapon slot is empty, well then there's no need to check anything, because it's empty, so we can easily equip it. So if it's empty, or our weapon slot dot current item dot item type isn't a item type dot two hand, so we are only able to equip our offhand if our weapon slot is empty, or if our weapon slot isn't a two hand in there. So let's say slot dot swap largest slot dot swap items slot dot offhand slot. There we go. So now we shouldn't be able to swap in our shield, even though if we have a two-hand in there. Let's see if we can pick it up. There's a two-hander. Can already equip it. See if we can get a shield. There we go. So if I right click on the shield now, it's still being equipped. Did I forget to save maybe? Save here. Give it one more try. There's the two-hander. There's the shield. If I right click on it, I'm still able to equip. So we need to figure out what's wrong here. So let's try to jump into our script here. I even have a feeling what it is, because I don't think I was thinking straight when I made that if statement in there. Yeah, here. So yeah, of course, if this isn't true, and we're not allowed to equip our offhand, well, then we're simply gonna go down here and equip it anyway. So this if statement should say else if item type isn't an offhand, isn't item type dot offhand. There we go. So before we were saying if we can't equip if we're not allowed to equip our offhand, well then we're going to go to the else statement and equip it anyway. Now we're saying if we can't equip our offhand, then we're going to check, well, then we're going to check if we can equip it anyway. Then we're going to check if it's an offhand before we try to equip it anyway. Sorry if I'm like getting caught in my own words here. Let's give it a try. So let's try to see if we can get some weapons. There we already have them. So we're going to equip our main hand and give it a go. If we try to equip our shield, I can't right click on it and equip it, and I can't click on it and put it down here still. So we need to fix that swap where we pick it up and put it down here. But right now I'm not able to right click on it and put it in. So let's figure out what's wrong there when we're trying to move it. So let's jump into our script and fix this. So right now in our equip item function, no, in our slot, in our swap item function, we're not taking into account if we are swapping a shield or an offhand in when we have a two-hander equipped in the main hand. So the thing is that when you swap something by clicking on it and moving it in, or right clicking on it and moving it in, swap items, it's called both times. And the thing is like inside our character panel here, this equip item is only called when we right click on it. So that's why it only works when we are trying to move something by right clicking on it. So basically this functionality we have here basically needs to be moved into our slot class in the swap item function here, because this function is called no matter if you move it by clicking and or moving it by right clicking. So let's take this function here, this else if statement here, that makes sure that we can only equip an offhand if there is no main hand equipped that is a two hand. So if we cut that one out at least and go into our slot script, then we need to take this into account right here. So we can make this into an if statement. So if our moving type here is equal to an offhand, or actually if our moving type isn't an offhand, I want to do it a little differently, or our character panel dot instance dot weapon slot is empty, because now we need to access the character panel through the singleton. So if the moving type isn't an offhand, then we're simply gonna do all this functionality down here. So we're not gonna swap, we can do like this. We're going to put one more scope here. There we go. So if our moving type isn't an offhand, then we're simply gonna do all these things where we just swap things around normally. But if it is an offhand, then we're gonna evaluate the rest of this if statement. So if our character panel weapon slot is empty, then we can equip it, so then we're gonna execute all the code down here. Or if our weapon slot, our character panel dot instance dot weapon slot dot current item dot item type, if that isn't a two hand, well then we can also go down and equip our slot here, our shield. So this if statement there should actually make sure that we are not able to equip anything, equip a shield if we have a main hand equipped, which is a two hand. So let's save this and jump back into the character panel, because we need to change things a little around here. So basically I think we can move this if statement here. So if it's a main hand, we do this. If it's an offhand, we are just going to try to swap it anyway. And then inside our swap items function, I can't do that or what? There we go. Inside our swap items function here, this line here is gonna make sure that we're not gonna equip our offhand. So because this code is executed when we right click and when we swap normally, then we are gonna make sure that it checks if we equip an offhand no matter what. So let's try this. If we could find a two-hander somewhere. And there we go, now we have a two-hander. So if I equip my two-hander and I right click on my shield, I'm not able to equip it, and if I pick up my shield and go here and try to equip it, it just pops back into my inventory. So now I'm unable to equip a shield and a two-hander in any way. So we can't equip them no matter what. So if I would equip my shield, now I can equip it because it's a one-hand I have, and I'm not able to switch to my two-hander, and I can't take my two-hander and place it there. So now our equipment should actually work, and I can't place equipment wrong places. I can only place it in the correct spots now. So now we actually have working equipment. So the next thing we should do should be calculating the stats for this equipment, but I'm not going to do this in this part of the tutorial. I'm going to wrap this one up now, and then I'm going to add another part where we actually calculate the item stats. I'm sorry if it got a little messy in the end there. I was just working as thinking as I was working, so I didn't think it all through right before I started this. So I hope you were able to understand what I did and able to follow this. If it's too hard to understand, then simply just write a comment or something and I'll get back to you right away.